Welcome to my home studio, and we are going to be weaving a Adirondack Pack basket today. If you follow me on Instagram, you might have seen these in miniature version or with chevron pattern. But today we're going back to basics and weaving a medium pack basket with a continuous weave. So let's get started. If you bought a kit from us, you should already have all your reeds you need. You will also need a pencil, a pair of scissors, some clips. These are just sewing clips. You could use clothespins, those work too. I also have this flat edge, if you can see that. And this is specifically made for basket weaving, but you could use a popsicle stick or a flat edge screwdriver, either works. And then I have a weight to hold down my reeds. This is just an old biscuit tin. You can use a book, anything really that's weighted. And you will need a measuring tape. All right, let's get started. So in your kit, you will have these reeds. These are 3/4 inches. And you will have two sets. One will be 44 inches and one will be 40 inches. So what you're going to do is you're going to take all of those out. Make sure you keep them separate in terms of length. And what we're going to do is, first off, we're just going to be very gentle. We don't want to snap these. If you do, you're out of luck. You can't use them. So we're just going to find the ends, put them together, and just very, very gently, we're gonna take our finger and kind of just find roughly where that middle is. It's gonna fit, and I'm gonna mark it with my pencil. And we're gonna do that on all of them. So when you're doing this, you want to find the rough side and the smooth side of each reed. These ones will be a little bit harder to find. If you can't figure that out, it doesn't really matter that much. It just makes a nicer basket if the smooth side is on the outside and the rough is on the inside. So we're marking that center point on the rough side. Okay, so I have already marked all my reeds and they have been soaking in my tub of water. You will also need a tub of water. And I'm gonna take my longer reeds, the 44 inches, 5 of these. Move my clips out of the way. I'm going to take these and I'm going to lay them out horizontally in front of me with that rough side up so I can see that pencil mark. And I'm going to line up all of those pencil marks roughly in a line. Just going to line those up. And this is going to form the bottom of our basket. Alright, so now that I have those roughly centered horizontally, this is when it is handy to have a weight. We'll just weigh those down for us so that they don't move around too much. I'm also going to move my bucket of water out of the way. Just have more space. Alright. Now that my reeds, my 40-inch reeds are soaked, these have just been soaking for a few minutes. They don't need to be super wet, but they do need to be pliable so that they can bend without snapping. We don't want them to snap. All right, so now we are gonna weave in our back and front sides. So I'm gonna take these 40-inch ones, and with the rough side up again, making sure I can see my pencil mark, I'm going to find the pencil line I created here, my horizontals, and I'm going to start underneath the first stake closest to me. And this will be important later when we're adding runners to the bottom of our basket. So I'm going to go underneath that first one, over the next one, under, over, under. Very simple. I'm just going to put that, and I'm going to pull this straight through until my pencil mark in the center of this one lines up with that center mark in the center stake. So 1, 2, 3 up. And that is going to be the very center of my basket of the bottom. So then I'll take the next one and doing the opposite weave on the right side. So I'm going to start over top and then under, over top, under. And I'm just going to pull that through, lining up that center stake. And I'm just going to push that through, push that closer. And then same thing on the other side. Remember, rough side up. Don't worry too much about the spacing of these right now. We'll fix that as we go. So, and now we're just going to continue doing that one on each side until we have all 9 of these woven in just a little check pattern. Remember, you're doing the rough side up because it's going to be the inside. What's facing us is going to be the inside of our basket. All right. All right. So both sides should end on an under weave on that first bit. All right, so now I don't need my weight anymore, but I'm gonna grab my tape measure, and our base needs to measure 5 by 8.5 roughly. So I'm just gonna go ahead and look and see where I'm at. So these all need to come in, and I'm at 12 here. So what I'm gonna do is finding this center, and then I'm gonna slowly push these in on both sides. Always go from this center stakes so you don't lose that true center of your basket, so that we have even sides to weave on. So push this in. I know I have to push it in quite a bit. And what we're trying to do is make these squares you're forming in between as even as possible on both sides. So it doesn't have to be perfect. You just want it as close as you can get. So that's okay, but we still need to come in quite a bit. I'm gonna move my towel out of the way, make this a little easier. Pushing these in. And I do not suggest weaving with nail polish on. As you can see, you'll probably chip it, and you'll be left with little flecks of nail polish throughout your basket. This has happened for me. All right, just gonna check real quick. Still needs to come in quite a bit, actually. Make sure you measure up and down too. on both sides so that you know your stakes are pretty even. Put this in. That should be good. 8 1/2, 8 1/2, 8 1/2. All right. So this will be the bottom of our basket. So now what we're going to do is we are going to take a long piece of your round reed and we are going to just twine in our bottom of our basket so it doesn't move as much when we're weaving. So I'm going to soak this for a minute. I'm just going to straighten these out, make sure they're even. All right. So for our twine, what we're going to do is we're going to start with a larger piece. We're going to find our ends and we're just going to make them uneven. Let's see if you can see that. Just make them a little bit uneven, and that's in case you run out of twine. It's easier to add to it if they're not in the same spot. If you use a long piece for this one, we shouldn't have a problem. So we're just going to pull this through, find the edge, and remember, do not snap these. Make sure they're well soaked, and we're just gonna, a little bit of fraying is okay, but we don't want to snap them in half. So what we're gonna do is this will be the front of our basket here. This will be the back. And these are our sides. I am just gonna find the third one over. It's underneath a horizontal one, and I'm just gonna loop that right around that, bringing it all the way to the base. And now we have both of these legs to the front, and now we're going to twine. So I'm going to take the leg that's farthest to the left, and I'm going to go in between these two weavers. We're putting it over this second leg and wrap it around this and back to the front, pushing it as close to the horizontal weaver as I can. And then we'll just do the same. Over that, behind, pushing it down, and back to the front. So we are taking turns weaving each of these front pieces, alternating as we go. We're going to go all the way around doing this. So when we get to the corner, feel free to move it. I find it easier if it's in front of me. We're just going to carry that pattern right around the corner. So this is still in the front, and this still goes over and behind it and back to the front on this side. So we're just twining that in. Make sure you're pushing it down so it gets as close to the base as you can. Again, corner. Just carrying that same pattern over. last square. And we are back to our start point. So what I'm gonna do here is I'm just gonna lap one more time, so I'm behind that first one. And then I'm gonna take my scissors and I'm gonna cut, just leaving a little bit of a tail. Just gonna cut those off and put them aside. Okay. And to secure this, we're just gonna tuck these. We're just gonna tuck these tails right underneath these twining. So I'm just gonna tuck one in there, pull it through. And this one in here. This can be difficult because you woven it pretty tight. Just pull that right through. So you can see there, I've just tucked it in just like that. Okay. And now we will trim off our edges. And now our base is twined in. All right. So now, because we are going to be doing a continuous weave, we need to have an odd number of our stakes. And right now we have an even number. So what I'm going to do, so this is my back. This is going to be my front. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to find the center, the fifth one on this row, right here. I'm gonna take my scissors and I'm just gonna split this right in half, right down to that base of the twine. Just gonna cut it right in half. Right down that center. Stopping right at the twine. So now I have these two smaller pieces in the front. And this will be the front of my basket. So if you have seen an Adirondack Pack basket, you will know that it has a little bit of a belly in the front, but the sides and the back we want straight. And that's just because it's a backpack and you want a straight back and sides. So in order to achieve that, we're making sure that these are soaked enough that when we bend them, they're not gonna snap. And what we're going to do is only on the sides and the back, not the front. We are going to take this and just gently bend it in half, just like that. And then we can just put it back down. And just going to do that for all of them. You might hear a little bit of cracking. That's okay. We just don't want it to snap, or else you have to start over, and that's a pain. And you can't use those anymore because they won't be the right length. Just gonna gently. And this will help us get that right angle we're looking for. So we did the back, and now we're gonna do the sides. We're not doing it on the front because we want to get a nice gentle belly that goes up. We don't want a right angle. Alright, and that's it. Now we are ready to start weaving. Alright, and so in order to start weaving our basket, you're going to need your 7mm weavers. These ones right here. Go ahead and put them in your water to soak for a minute. And what we're going to do is a continuous weave. So that just means after every row, we will not stop and cut our weave and then start a new row. We're going to use the same weaver to continuously weave around the basket. So I'm just going to grab one of my weavers. Now they don't have to soak for too long. We just want them a little pliable. you don't want them to soak too long or they start to fray. And then they become hard to weave. So I'm just gonna take one piece. So it's pretty long. And again, you have a rough side and a smooth side. So I just want to find the rough side, and that's going to be the one I want facing inside my basket. So I'm going to take this, and what I'm going to do is just taper off the end a little bit with my scissors. Just sort of like that, just to start it. Because as we weave around, when we get back to our front of our basket where we'll start, it'll step up slowly, and this weaver just helps you kind of avoid having a little hump. All right, so let's get started. So you will need your clips for this part. So we're going to take our basket with our front facing us, and we're going to find where we split those two front ones. I'm going to take my weaver with the tapered end, and I'm just going to put it underneath, over the first one and underneath the second one, just to hold it in place, leaving this little tapered tail out here. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to hold that in place with a clip. Your first 3 rows about are the hardest to control because everything's sort of loose, and that's okay. So I'm going to weave. When I weave this, I'm making sure my belly portion lays pretty flat because I'm going to do a gentle uptake. We're not putting any tension on our weaver because we want to form that little belly. So in order to do that, we kind of need to go out like this, right? And then up and then back in. This is where it gets a little difficult because while we're weaving, right from the start, we want these to be completely up and these ones down. So what we're just going to do, we're going to start with a over under weave. So we have over under, over. I'm just going to keep going, under, over, and under. Okay. And then once we get to our sides, it might be helpful for you to clip your end bits together. It just helps kind of see the shape of that basket. Remember this one, we want to go up. I'm not going to do that because my weaver is very long and I don't want to pull it through. But so once we get to the corner, it kind of goes, you can tell our weaver, it was laying flat and now it's kind of going to be standing up straight. So I'm just going to continue that over under weave. And if it helps you, you can clip it in. I like to clip it like that just so I can see. It doesn't need to be perfect these first few rows. We're just starting the shaping of the basket. But as we go, you'll see that these back corners will form right angles. So I'm going to use a clip to just clip that in while it's a little bit loose. And so we just keep going on that over under pattern. It can be difficult because these are so long right now and it's a bit unruly. But as you weave, it'll get a lot easier. Over, under, over, under. Turn in the corner. I'm going to clip that together. And I like to clip these back ones just so they're a little bit out of my way. And I'll remember this way, you'll remember that they need to stand up while this one goes flat. Over, under, over, under. and then back towards that flat. We don't want this side to be, the weavers to be up, because we're trying to get that belly, remember? So ignoring that little tail, we're just gonna go, and now we are back at the beginning. So if you did this right, you should now be weaving opposite of the next row. If you haven't, you'll know. So I did under, over, 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 over. So that's where I messed up. So I'm just gonna unwind it and fix that pattern. First row is usually the hardest. Over, under, over. There we go. Over. All right. So now I'm weaving opposite of where I started. So we're still doing the under over pattern, but it should be opposite of what you just wove. Yeah. So I'm just adjusting these front bits because it's very tight here. I'm just pushing them out a little bit like that. And as we weave this front of our basket, it's naturally going to form a little cat head, and that's what we want. So just continue weaving. Remember, we're doing loose corners in the front. Let's move my clips out of my way. Smush these down. So I'm just gonna pull that through, make sure corner's not too loose. And as I'm weaving, I'm pushing these rows of weavers closer together, just like that, just to push it down so we don't have any gaps. Okay. At this point, I find it easier to weave sort of like this from this side. Let's move it down. When you're weaving though, on these ones, especially if you're weaving in this position, they want to slant down. We want to make sure they stay perpendicular. And you can just do that by, when you're weaving it in, just bringing it up a little bit. Continue this way so you can see a little bit what I'm doing. So I'm just pulling these down tight as I go. Just over, under. It's okay if your first like 3 rows are kind of loose, a little wonky. We'll fix it as we go. This is just sort of to get your basic shape going. And you can use as many clips as you need for as long as you want. I usually don't use them after that first row, but if they're helpful, use them. All right, so I'm back in the front. Again, I'm gonna do a loose corner so that can keep bowing out. Pushing that we're back to the front, and we're just gonna weave opposite. As you are weaving, especially in the front where it steps up one, you might start getting a little mountain shape, sort of like that. And just make sure when you're pushing these down, you push that front row down quite tight, especially right in the middle, and that'll help even it out as you go. Okay. So you can see here, because this is a loose corner and these are tight, that these kind of want to go in like this. So make sure when you're weaving, you just pull those out. We want them to stay straight as possible. We want to keep even spacing between these rows. All right. So when I get to these corners, what I'm doing is I'm just gently pushing in my weaver like this so it forms that sort of right angle and keeps it a little better. We don't want this corner to be round, we want it to be very sharp. Remember, keeping these straight. Don't be afraid to move them and wiggle them around. We've already locked them in with our twine, so they're not going to move too much. And we just want to make sure that they keep staying perpendicular. All right. Again, just pushing that in so it's a little bit of a right angle. These should be evenly spaced as you go up. You'll notice that. Bleeding a little bit. Right? And so you'll see on the front ends that my corners are getting larger, and that's fine. Whereas these are staying quite tight like that. And as I'm going, I'm splaying this front out a little bit to help kind of form that little cat head. So I just do that. I like to bend it in the middle just so I know I can see the better shape. Right. And so that is 3 rows of weaving. So at this point, your basket should be getting a little bit of the shape that you want. You can see here, I don't want a cat head in the back, so I'm just gonna push these a little bit down. Remember, if they are getting dry and you think they're gonna snap, just go ahead and dunk it in your water to soak for a minute. Push those up so that we can start seeing that. And you can start seeing in the front of our basket how these ones are going up like this, and these are still spilling out in the front, and that's forming under our belly, basically. If I lift those up, you can see it's starting to get that cat head shape. So every 3 rows, I like to go through and just push all of my weavers down, making sure we have like a nice tight basket that's not going to have any holes. You don't want any holes if you put anything in it if you're forging. So just keep pushing those down as much as you can. This can be a bit difficult at times. Just do your best. Okay, and we're going to keep weaving like this. I think for about 16 inches. And so I will meet you back here. All right, before we go any further, I'm going to quickly show you how to add more weaver. So I like to avoid ending your weaver on a corner like this. So what I'm going to do is I have a little bit of a tail here, and I'm going to end right here. So I'm just going to go 1, 2, 3, 4 over, and I want to end on a row where my weaver will lay on top when I'm weaving it. So I'm just gonna it's gonna lay on top of this stake right here. So I'm gonna actually end right on this corner. So I'm just gonna cut that right on top of that stake, like it was gonna sit right over it. I'm just gonna actually go one more. Just like it's gonna go right over it. I'm gonna cut that tail. Then I'm gonna take my next weaver. Remember to find the rough side and make sure that goes in. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna go 1 over. I recommend going 4 over if you can. I ended on a corner, so it's not a big deal. But so we're gonna go 1, 2, 3, 4 over from where you ended. We're gonna tuck this behind that weaver and right over top of our previous one. And then we're gonna weave right over top of it. So then, you see, that was my previous weaver. I'm just gonna go right on top of it, just like that. So it's hidden behind your new weaver. So push that in a little bit. And so then you just continue weaving. Yeah, easy peasy. So I'm just gonna continue weaving. And as I go, you'll know it's hidden. And keep going. You can see I'm shaping my basket now. It's got pretty straight sides and my belly is stepping out like that. It's going a little bit wider, and I have that little cat head in the front. I want to make sure these corners, this one and this one, are about even. And as I'm going, I'm kind of just splaying this front out a little bit to give me a little bit more room to weave. See you in a minute. Alright, so my basket is at a height of about 6 inches now, and the belly circumference is about 36 inches. So that's pretty much as much of a belly as I want. So from here on out, I'm going to start weaving this straight up. And in order to do that, when I weave around the front of the belly on this first row, making sure everything's packed down tight, I'm just going to put the slightest bit of tension on my weaver. And we're not pulling it in, I just want it to be straight. So once I get this on this first row, just a little bit, just the tiniest bit of tension, so that now it's gonna go straight up. And I'm gonna continue doing that until I'm about, I think, at 12 inches. And then we'll start bringing the belly portion in. So once we start bringing the belly in, we will want to lose about 6 inches. So right now my circumference is at 36. So I'm going to do a few rows going straight up so I can form that little belly pop out. And then we will come back and do the bringing it in. So once I do that first row of bringing it in so it's straight up, I don't need to put any more tension on this. I'm just going to continue weaving stacked on top of the other weaver. I don't need to do any sort of tension. The shape's already there for me. All right, and you'll notice these will start becoming even instead of flaring out. We'll come back. Right. At this point, my basket is about 10 inches in height, and has a belly circumference of about 36 inches. At this point, we want to start bringing that belly in, just like that, to form, a little pop out like that. So we want to lose about 6 inches. If you can't get that quite, it's fine. We're just going to get as close to that as we can so we can form that little belly shape. And in order to do that, when we are weaving the front of our basket here, we're going to take our weaver and we're just going to pull slightly. Put a little bit of tension on your weaver as you weave across the front of the basket, just like this. And that will bring these front bits in. Just put a little bit of tension. Remember, we want it subtle. We don't want too much, or you'll start seeing little pop outs from your weavers. Just a little bit of tension, just a little bit. And then we're going to slowly do that every time we weave the front of the basket. Remember, we don't want to bring in our sides and our back. We want those to stay straight. So we're only putting tension on the weaver when we're weaving this front bit. Let's see. Another row. Front, go to the sides straight, and now we're gonna just put a little bit more tension. Just pull in. So what I do is I weave it and then I pull slightly. Move it around, pull slightly. Move it around, pull slightly. Just slightly. So you can kind of see it's already starting to go a little bit in. So we're going to lose about 6 inches. And we'll be about here, I think about 16 inches in height. All right, let's work hard. So your basket should be at 14 inches in height at this point, and look a little bit like this. So I lost a few inches here, and I measured the circumference is about 32 inches. So now we are ready to add our handles. Should be in your kit. You should have a little notch like that. So the notches are actually going to face outwards, and we're going to tuck our handle right into the back of our basket here. So I'm going to find my center and then the two right next to my center. And that is where we're going to tuck our basket, our handles right on top of those. So this is where it might be handy to have a flat tool such as this, a popsicle stick or a small flathead screwdriver, and you're going to be gentle because we don't want to break our weavers. We're going to go ahead and I'm going to make a little bit of room, and I'm going to tuck that leg right underneath that weaver and push it down a little bit, push it down. And I'm going to do the same to this side. If I can move it down. Just going to pop that right in. Pop those up right under. You're going to have to use a little bit of force. Since you should have woven these pretty tight. I'm just a little pushing that up so I can get that down in there. Down. And so we're going to do that until your notches are even with that last row of weaver. We don't want the weaver to be in the notches, we want it to be just below it. So I'm just going to push that in. So it should look a bit like that when you are done. Right, and now we can twine in our top. So you're going to do this. You need a long piece of your round reed. Soak it for a little bit, just like we did the bottom. Find your ends, stagger them a little bit. Gently find that. And we're going to go ahead and do the same sort of twine we did earlier. I'm going to start on the side this time. Just make it a little easier. And we're going to twine same way, round and over. Around and over, pushing that all the way down. And over. And this is giving us what we call a false rim. And it's just a space for our actual rim pieces to sit on top of, and that we can attach our rim pieces to. Same way, just go round and over, round and over, each piece, round and over. Okay. And then once you get to the handle, you are gonna weave those right with the ones that they're sitting on. Just act like they're stakes, and we want this weaver to sit in those notches. So I'm just going to go around, pull it through, around. It's a little bit harder with the handle. Through. And pull it through. Just continue going. So we're going to do this 2 or 3 times. It's up to you. We only really need 2, but you know, just keep going right on top of that last row. So I made my twine a little bit short so I can show you what to do when you run out before you reach your end. So I'm just gonna keep weaving until I have a little bit of a tail. So this one's short, this one's also short, but it's a little bit longer. So we're gonna focus on this short one right now. And I'm gonna take a smaller bit of my twine pieces here. Also soaked. Let that soak for a second. Alright, so I have a little bit shorter piece than I had before. We don't need to bend these. So I'm going to take one of those, and right where this one came around, make sure you are finishing with this one underneath. I'm just going to pop that right between those two. Sorry, I'm going to do one more, a little bit extra. Okay. So it's finishing on top. You want your little pieces finished right on top of that one before this one gets woven through. And we're just going to pop it right between there. Hold it. And then continue weaving, just like that. So I'm just going to tuck that out of the way. So I just popped that right between those two. And then continue weaving. then when I run out of the other side, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to go around so that it's on top. Grab my other extra bit of weaving and then just tuck it right between these two here. Tuck that out of the way and continue weaving just like normal. And we will trim those bits as we go. Afterwards. All right. Difficult. And there we go. Going back to the beginning, and then we're going to secure it the same way we did in the beginning, over on the inside of the basket. Trim it, discard those, and just tuck those in to the row right below it. It can be difficult to maneuver at this point. Just do your best. You can use your flathead if you need to. Just make a little bit of room. And pull it tight. Same thing here. There we go. So now we need to cut and tuck, which means we need to secure all of our upward stakes inside the basket. So at this point, your stakes are probably a little bit dry. I would just hit them with some water. I'm just gonna dunk mine real quick into my water. I'm just gonna go right in, dunk them, making sure all those joints get wet. Out. So now all these are wet, and we're going to do the same thing we did in the beginning, where we're just going to bend it inwards. We're going to do that on all of them. It's okay if you get a little bit of cracking. We just don't want them to snap again. So I'm just going to do that on all of them. All the way around. All the way around. All right. So they're all a little bit like this. I'm gonna go ahead and take these two front ones, bend them back towards the front. I'm just gonna snip those off at the base because they're very hard to tuck. That gives us a little bit of opening to start our tuck and our cut and tuck. This is gonna be a little bit hard to show you on camera because it's just small space and both of my hands need to be in there. But I will do my best. So basically what we are going to do is we are going to bend these in and we're going to tuck them in to the weaving on the inside of the basket. So they're just tucked in on themselves. in order to do that, I like to, now that we've bent these all, stick your hand in, take your weaver, put it in, and look, see about 1, 2, 3 rows of weaving on top of your stake down, and kind of mark it with your thumb and just cut it at that spot. And then what we're gonna do is just take this, bend it in on itself, and on that second row, we're gonna tuck it behind the weaver. So this can be really hard. This is where a flat head comes in handy, or you can use your finger, find that second weaver here, and just kind of push it so that there's a little bit of a gap that you can tuck into. I'm gonna use a flat head. This one doesn't want to go through. So you're gonna tuck it through that second one, and then straight through the third one as well, if you can. Let's pop those in. And then it'll be secure like such. You can see on the inside that it's tucked right into that row on itself. So you're gonna do that around the whole basket. If you really can't tuck it, that's okay. You can cut it off at the base. As long as you have the majority of them tucked, you should be okay. You can also make this a little bit easier if you want by cutting it a little point at the end, just like so, and tucking it that way. It kind of helps get it through the weaver. Okay, so I am gonna do this. All the way around the basket. And we will come back. You have tucked all your wreaths. It should look like this. And we are ready to add the rim. Okay, so for this, you need your rim pieces. It's gonna be the big, larger pieces with the slightly rounded edge and then the rough side. You will need your rim filler, which is going to be this round, larger round reed. And you need the lashing, which is this reed. You can tell it's slightly shiny, and that's all in your kit. So I'm just going to go ahead and put my lashing right into the water to soak, and I'm going to get my basket ready for the rim. So first you need to measure the circumference of your basket. I've already done this. I think it's mine is about 32 inches. So I'm going to take my rim piece and I'm going to cut a 32-inch length. And that's going to be the rim piece that's on the inside of my basket. So to get the outside rim piece, I'm going to add 4 to that. So mine would be 36 inches. And I'll cut another piece with that, which I already have. And then I'll cut my rim filler also down to that 32-inch measurement. I'm going to go ahead and put those all in the water to soak. Take my lashing out. Alright, so you do this. It's helpful to have a flat edge or an owl, and you can use a screwdriver, it's fine. We're gonna be weaving our rim piece right over top of our twine bit and that first row of weaver. So make sure your handle is far enough down. Alright, so now that that is soaked, I'm going to take my shorter of the rim pieces and this is going to be the inside. So it's actually it naturally curves sort of this way, and we're gonna curve it the other way. I like to start on the side of my basket, and we're gonna be weaving this way. So I'm gonna take this piece, and I'm gonna put it inside my basket with that round edge facing out. And your end pieces should overlap a little bit. So I'm just gonna go ahead and put that there. It doesn't need to be perfect yet. I'm just gonna put it in there, and I have these larger clips, which I find easier to use. You can still use clothespins, that should be fine. So that's just to secure it right there. Then I'm gonna take my longer rim piece, and I'm gonna stagger it a little bit, so slightly to the right of where I started my inner piece with the round edge out. I'm just gonna go ahead and clip that in as well. And that just sits right over that twined bit. Right there. Perfect. And then you'll notice there is a gap between your rim pieces, and that's where a rim filler comes in. And we're just gonna go ahead and slide that right over the top of those. Again, I'm gonna stagger it a little bit between the two pieces. There. I'm just gonna hold that in place with this clip so I know where my front is as I weave. So as we weave, we're gonna be weaving these together into the basket with our lashing. So to start, I'm just using these clips to hold them in place and to make sure I get a tight seal. These will be moving a little bit as we weave. As you saw, there's a staggered edge. So we want to go a little more to the right of where our rim pieces begin. And we're going to take our lashing. Now the shiny bit of the lashing is the part that we want on the outside. So I'm just going to go ahead and take one end of the piece, and with the rough side facing towards me, I'm going to go ahead and tuck it into that first row of weaver, our first horizontal row, and then I'm going to like maybe tuck the end just underneath the rim piece. And I'm doing that right over a stake. Just put that there. So I secured it right there, right over that stake. So when we weave, we're going to be weaving between each stake. So this can be a little bit confusing because we don't want our twining to get twisted. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and keeping the nice sides toward me, I'm just going to find that end. And I have a particularly long piece. But so we're going to find the end, and I'm just going to go ahead and taper that a little bit, which will help me with getting in between those spaces. So now we begin. So I'm just going to hold on to that bit so it doesn't move. And then right between these two stakes, where the first row meets our twine row, I'm going to take my flat edge and I'm just going to pop that in there and like make a little bit of room. And then I'm just going to take this and push it right through so that the rough side is facing up when we twine in a loop. So I don't want to get this tangled. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do that, and I'm immediately going to go into the next row right over the top, right between the next two stakes, and I'm going to do the same thing, pop it a little bit of trim already. Use my flat edge and just make a little room. And I'm gonna pop that right between it just to hold it in place for me. So that way I'm not gonna lose that piece. Right. So you wanna make sure your rim is sitting on top, and covering both those, so we don't want these bits to be popping out. So I don't have to worry about my end because it's secured in the next row. I'm just gonna come over here so you can see that a little bit better. And I'm just gonna go ahead and pull. See where I had that loop? I'm gonna pull it through. All the way. Make sure it doesn't get caught on our rim. Holding that bit. Pull it over. And that is our first lashing. So we're going to continue doing that. So we already pulled it through our next one. We're going to pull that, and then we're going to go around again and secure it right between the next two. These can get kind of tight. That's why it's handy to have this tool. I'm just going to secure my end here so I don't lose it and it doesn't twist. And then I'm going to go back to the side, making sure that's tight. And I'll just pull that loop through. Making sure we don't get tangled in between here. It's a bit easier as you use up some of your lashing. Twisted. And you form that cross. Alright, so you're just going to keep doing that in the entire basket. Alright, so I am back near the beginning of my lashing. I left a little bit of room, and I just carried the same pattern you can see over top of the handles, notching the rim filler into those notches there, and just squeezing as tight as I could there. But basically, yeah, I just continued that pattern. So now we are back at the beginning. I'm gonna go ahead and trim some of my tails. So I need to trim my rim filler to about here, so they kind of stay flush, the ends against each other. Just gonna put that up. And I'm gonna go ahead and trim off a little bit of my front rim. I still want a little bit of that overlap on those pieces, but it doesn't need to be as drastic. I'm gonna do the same with the back. Now I'm just gonna use my clip to hold that in place and continue weaving. Just go right up until your starting point. Trying to get it as tight as I can. Securing those overlap pieces. So, park that right here. No. Alright. And I hide, if I can, that rim filler where it's cut right under that lashing bit. And now we're going to pull through with our last one. And there we go. Even, make sure that's tight. So it's going to hold. And we're just going to cut off the extra and leave a little bit of tail. And we're going to do the same thing we did when we started. And just tuck this underneath into one of these weavers to secure it. I'm just going to tuck it between where I tuck the stakes. I'm going to need to trim it a little bit more. That's secure, and then I'm going to trim off the excess bit. And that is the majority of your basket. It's kind of a little wonky shaped. After that, you can kind of push it back into shape. So you can see the lashing goes all the way around. There we go. And then right where we started, we just went ahead and tucked that right there. Alright, so you're basically done. We're gonna go ahead and add our runners to the bottom to give it a little bit of stability. In order to do that, we need to take your excess rim piece, and I'm just gonna go ahead and lay it across the bottom, measure that, and cut it. And I want to do that twice, so I want 2 pieces. And this is where it was important that we started our basket the way we did. So that kind of left us the perfect little places to tuck these in. So I'm going to just go find this front bit right here, push down, and just tuck that right underneath there. And we're going to do the same on this side. Tuck that in right underneath there, and just push it out so that it's a little bit of a straight piece. And we're going to do the same on this row right here. Push that down and do the same on the other side. There you go. And those will be your runners. And that just allows your basket to stand steadily without too much rocking. And that's it. That is your basket. You can now attach your harness. Just goes over the front. I like to run my straps between the runner and the bottom of your basket. And that is an Adirondack Pack basket. So just make sure you let this dry out completely in a well-ventilated area. Keep it away from extreme heat sources like vents or fireplaces. If it does get wet, if you're foraging or anything like that, just let it dry out completely. And that is it.